Alright.
So what do you work on?
So not a lot FI related, particularly. There was a bit of Flux stuff and other things. There was some improvements in the speedrunning thing, but that's pretty non-consequential. I did just before this put up stuff about the like in regards to some of the questions from last session. Um, so that was postmortem and
Right.
explaining some of the.
How's the speedrunning going? Did you learn anything
Um,
about mastery?
so getting there a bit. Not like it's not. I'm not mastering it yet. There's some. So uh, so I took the world record down to 151.80 or 151.8, and then aggressive combo took it down to 151.5. Um, the way that we've done so we're using the modded client now because it's just way nicer to speedrun and there's no physics changes. Um, the way we've sort of dealt with that is to make a new category. I think technically it should be a different game on speedrun.com because of the way that they set stuff up, but it works fine for the moment. Yeah. So there hasn't been any significant improvement. Besides, I noticed some a little bit of speed tech to do with when to pick up orbs because you get a speed boost and it lasts a certain amount of time. And so by stretching out or by pacing the orbs better, you can stay at a higher speed for longer. But there's even like taking it like the world record down again. There were mistakes in that. Not just things um, uh, like significant stuff where if I'd like gone at it slightly differently, I'd be able to save like half a second or whatever else. So there are a few of those. Um, yeah, I did notice because of the way that the thing is set up now, the modded client, there's uh, we've got more of a record about how we or how many attempts and stuff we do by default. Um,
Hmm.
so I know that it took me 284 attempts. Some of those were just resets at 0 time. But there was 284 attempts between the last one and this one. So that's sort of nice to know. Yeah. So, but I am appreciating a bit more the mastery thing and noticing that even when, because I often do it like when I'm a bit tired, it'll take me a bit of time to get into the groove of things, and then I get a lot more consistent. So I'm not sure if that's just a lack of practice thing, like whether it's possible to just get super good or super consistent up front. But yeah, but there's definitely still like even in one of the things that sort of is difficult that I've been practicing deliberately is some of the sections where there's a lot of wiggle room. Like you can lose a lot. I can lose 2 seconds without making any particular mistakes, sort of thing. Like it's just not quite tight
Yeah.
enough. And that's different to the other parts where it's like there's an obvious mistake. Like I need to go back and pick up an orb to continue or whatever. So that's sort of it's interesting though. I'm still enjoying it, which is good.
Yeah, with the places with more wiggle room, you can learn criteria for what to look for to tell the difference between a good and a bad run. So it becomes more obvious to you when you're losing time or not. There's some sort of visual cues or something that you can look out for to understand it better.
Yeah. I need to think about that because so there's it's sort of like some of these parts feel a bit like skiing well, that's what I imagine. I haven't actually skied. Um, but the way that like you sort of like go back and forward sort of thing. and there's a smoothness that feels good, but that's not necessarily faster than just stopping on the spot. It sort of depends, because the momentum system or the velocity system is a bit weird. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but it's one of those, like, if you just lose you know, 10% worse on each corner, it's hard to tell at the time, but that makes like a significant, that can be, yeah, 2 seconds lost in this one section. Uh, yeah, so I need to think a bit about that.
Yeah. So, possibly you need to formulate more clearly in your mind what the ideal strategy is.
Um, yeah, the
Like maybe
movement,
you're not sure.
I've been thinking a bit about the movement. There's been, like, within the last week there was some I guess discoveries sort of thing relating to like the orbs and speed and stuff. Um, what I particularly I'm not clear on what's the fastest way to take certain corners. Um, I know some slow ways, but yeah, overall the fastest way is, I need to, yeah, think more about that. Come up with some explanations for how to do it better.
Have you been reading?
No, I have been thinking about reading and been dissatisfied in it in with not reading. Um, it's one of the things I was thinking about was that it's weird the way that I prioritize time, in that reading feels like a big thing to like get into or whatever. Um, like as in, if I've got a choice between that and doing something else, it feels like there's a high barrier to entry to reading. Even though there's not, and it's one of those things where the payoff time wise is pretty decent. Uh, like in a few hours, I can get through, a decent chunk of a book. Uh, compared to a few hours of like, doing something else like watching YouTube. Um, yeah, I don't know. I have been thinking about it a bit, but I'm not sure how to resolve the conflict yet. One thing just that I could do is just start, uh, just start reading more, and ignore the feeling that there's, or the resistance to starting. And if I can do that, particularly with easier stuff, then that might uh, help reduce that, uh, I don't know, yeah, intuitive blocker. Um,
Yeah, so one of the things you could try is reading in small chunks on purpose. Like, have you tried reading in 2 minute chunks or 5 minute chunks and get more used to small chunks and find out what the minimum size that works okay is? Both initially and also after a little bit of practice, it'll go down a bit. And then you'll probably have a lot of diminishing returns on lowering it further, so it'll be semi-stable.
yeah. So that's stuff like how much do I need to read before I um, don't feel like I need to catch up? Like, because if I pick something up again, there's always a little bit of like, where was I, or what was I thinking at the time? Getting into the same space. Um,
Yeah, yeah. So if you did like 10-second chunks, it would be very hard to establish flow and get anywhere.
yeah, on all but the like simplest things.
Yeah, you'd
Um,
you'd spend like the whole time just finding your place again.
yeah, yeah,
So figuring out the smallest chunks you can do without too much trouble, and then practicing that size a bit on purpose just to get more used to it should make it easier to start reading because you'll be like, well, I have 20 minutes and I know that the minimum is 7 minutes. So that's plenty of time. It'll work fine.
yeah. Um, this feels it feels a bit related to something I've been thinking in general about short-term goals. Like, in some ways, I have some short-term goals that's like either goals for like today or stuff that I want to get done in the next week or 2 weeks. Um, uh, I had a suggestion from my friend some month or two ago, about managing this, which was you should review, your goals at the beginning of each day. Or he was particularly talking about when to stop each day, and something like sorry, setting like a hard limit on it. And I suggested reviewing goals at the beginning of the day, and then, you can stop whenever you finish those. Um, I don't review my goals daily, or I don't review things in that sort of way. I like get up and then start working on something, and just do stuff in the order that it occurs to me to. And it means that I allocate time badly, such that I don't end up with time to read or time to do certain things, or work on longer term stuff a little bit and get short term stuff out of the way. Um, yeah, I
Do
think that
you
would help. Sorry, yeah.
do you get caught up in the flow of the day and sort of being busy and forget to take little breaks and think about what you're doing and like
Yeah,
have a perspective?
I actually think I prefer that. Well, at least that's what I sort of do naturally. The reason I say prefer is because I guess I observe myself doing it. Um, I haven't. Oh no, cool. Uh, so like one of the reasons that I enjoy doing various like coding things is that I can like get into it and then do that for like 6 hours and not think about anything else, like not have those things.
Yeah, there's kind of different things. There's like flow state with the programming where you're being really productive and focused, which can be a good thing. But there's also like you can go through days like doing checking your email and checking Twitter and watching a few YouTubes and getting lunch and like you can do a bunch of different things and not have like any sustained productive flow, but also be caught up in the day and be sort of busy the whole time.
Hmm. I don't have as many of those days, but I definitely do sometimes, and I know what you mean. Um, I don't particularly like that stuff. It feels like there's a lot of stuff coming at you. I mean, usually when I'm doing that, it's because there's like lots of stuff to react to and new things to react to come up throughout the day.
Yeah, there's also issues like whether you're comfortable being alone and being quiet and not doing anything and uh just like being calm for a bit and like not rushing off to do the next goal or task immediately. And that kind of thing, like some people kind of avoid it all the time, but it can give some perspective where you like step back a little and it's like going to a meta level where you see what you're doing or like look at your life instead of being in the midst of your life.
Yeah, I don't think I have a problem with like it's so I've thought about like the idea of I don't know, I guess loneliness in general or whatever. Um and the desire for like doing stuff. Like there have been times where, if I was alone, I would try and find something to do, or find someone to do something with or whatever else. I don't have like a problem with that anymore. Um I'm quite comfortable being like alone for days and not talking to anyone. Um
What
but
about
that
like,
doesn't
go ahead.
but it doesn't mean that I'm like taking doesn't mean that I'm like necessarily like okay with just sitting and thinking about myself for a bit or things like that. Um like there's still a bit of a desire to go find something to do maybe. Um or that it's hard to prioritize that because I feel like there's stuff to do, and that it's like, doing that sort of thing would not be as good a use of time.
Yeah, what about inner monologue and like having a voice in your head that's always distracting you and commenting? Is that like ever present for you, or do you have turn it off sometimes?
Uh it's so yeah, I turn it off sometimes. I mean, mostly when like thinking about the idea of an inner monologue, mostly it when I do that, it's uh doing particular things. Like if I'm reading something that's interesting, so like reading BOI for example, um I would like be sitting down, read, maybe as little as a paragraph, or a page or something, and then uh, if it was a small thought, I might not get up, but often I'd like get up and walk around for 10 minutes, thinking about it. Uh, but I don't. It's not like I've got a constant monologue or something like that. I don't have like intrusive thoughts or things that occur.
Okay, yeah. I asked about this mostly because of the not double checking your goals on a regular basis. So that can be related to being caught up on things and not taking a step back and looking at what you're doing and why very much, and not taking little breaks. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on there.
Yeah, I do like in thinking about double checking goals and stuff. I do check like I do often think about stuff that I've got to do or want to do. Um, I think maybe one of the problems is that when I so wake up in the morning and have a bit of a routine, but then I'll go to start doing whatever is like foremost in my mind. And when I really consider the goals and stuff, often that's like at night or like after I've, you know, done a bunch of stuff, rather than before. There's a little bit of like morning stuff where it's just like, what do I have to do today? But that's not really that explicit, and it's sort of like come up with a list as quickly as possible and then start doing it, as opposed to uh, like taking a bit more time with it. And I never write it down currently. Sometimes under pressure, I will like write down stuff like that because there's like too many things to keep track of, just in my head. But they're the exceptions, not the norms, and usually it's pretty situation dependent.
Okay. I think it might be worth trying meditation. You might find it pretty easy, um, which is fine. Or if you find it hard, that's a sign that there's actually something important there. And so it can help with calmness and getting like stepping back from things a little, so you can get a wider perspective. And um, it can help with emotion stuff, letting you examine emotions rather than experiencing them directly, like looking at them and seeing what they're like instead of just sort of doing them and being caught in them.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I have some experience. Um, like there's a few times in my life where I've tried to like make um uh like mindfulness meditation a more common thing, or like a regular thing, and it's never really lasted that long. Um, I mean, it probably means that I've you know done like 20 or 30 sessions on my own sort of thing. Um,
Yeah, okay. How did it go then? Did you have difficulty with it, or did you just get bored of it, or forget to do it, not see enough
um,
benefit?
yeah, the latter stuff. I don't think I found it particularly difficult, particularly because it's been like there's been a few times like that over like multiple years. Um, uh, it's not that it's difficult. I think it's just maybe boring or like I don't feel like it's necessarily that helpful. But I've never, tried to quantify that to actually figure out whether it is helpful or not. Like having like a journal where I write down about the day on the days where do it for every day, and then compare the days where I do and don't meditate, for example. Um, yeah, but that might be a thing to do that might be helpful.
Yeah, not a strong recommendation, just an idea. And you can do it for like, how long were you doing it for? What kind of session length?
Oh, 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Try 5 to 10 instead.
Yeah, okay. 5 to 10 is pretty easy in terms of like a morning routine, which I don't really have a morning routine at the moment. Um, like I sort of wake up and get a coffee and plod around for 20, 30 minutes, and some point in the morning have a shower. But it's not like uh, when I used to like go to work, particularly if I had to leave early, I'd have like a pretty tight routine. So maybe I should focus on. I think I should probably develop something like that and habitualize it.
Yeah, I don't think doing it longer. I'm kind of skeptical of doing it longer, except as like a special occasion, like occasionally try long. But I think doing it longer on a regular basis, I'm kind of doubtful of.
Yeah. What's hard to there's it's not like I mean with stuff like you know so I'm familiar somewhat with like Sam Harris's advocacy of it and others. Uh, it doesn't seem like there's a easy break point about like when you've done enough. Um, like I haven't heard them say anything about that sort of thing. Like less than 2 minutes is definitely not worth it. Um,
Oh, so Dan Harris says even 1 minute is good. Forming the habit is more important than the length, and using a timer is fine. And 5 to 10 minutes is a good goal. It doesn't need to be long. So there's some reasonably clear guidance from a popular meditation person there.
fair enough. Yeah, I guess the break point would be in general what's useful for each person, which is maybe not consistent and yeah, but makes it I guess a bit fuzzier, but yeah.
Yeah, his book is Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, or one of his books that says that. I read part of it. It's okay. It's not very dense on information. He throws in a lot of stories and social stuff, and
Yeah, it would should be easy to read then. Super quick.
yeah, it's okay. It spends a lot of time not teaching meditation, but addressing objections like I'm too busy or various other reasons people don't do it. A lot of it is trying to deal with that.
Yeah. The lack of goal stuff, by the way, I think is one of the reasons this like my consistency with doing philosophy stuff is pretty proportionally related to how frequently our sessions have been. Like it definitely feels like dropping to 2 days a week has meant, which I mean, in some ways, one of the reasons for dropping to 2 days a week is to give me more time to do other stuff, but it's meant that I'm not consistently doing a certain amount of FI stuff a day. Um, it's more like I'll do a big chunk when it occurs to me that it's the biggest thing to prioritize.
Yeah, it seems like part of what you do is try to get enough like homework done for the next session to have stuff to go over.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the meditation stuff is also there's some overlap with my old emotions essay that I don't know how well you remember this one.
Um, I don't think very well. I think I read it in like, well, the last time I read it was like 2017, 2018, so I don't remember it particularly well.
It talks about reacting to things more slowly and thinking about what you want your action to be. And if you can figure out what you want to do faster than you actually react, then you get a lot more control over yourself. That you can, yeah, you can improve your reaction time of figuring out what reaction you think is good and why and whatever. Initially you might figure it out hours later, but you can speed that up with practice and, you know, repeating situations so you already know what you think. And if you combine that with reacting to things slower, like don't feel the emotion for 30 seconds, then it gives you enough time to
Mm.
potentially control your reaction according to what you actually think is a good idea.
I
So,
think I'm, oh, yeah, sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think I've been probably better than average on that most of my life. Uh, yeah, like there's a particular example I can think of in like 2015, I think, where um, like I didn't understand the way someone reacted to me, and I essentially spent like 3 days thinking about it until I realized uh, like what they were thinking, such that it made sense. Um, but because that's like the general sort of pattern there being that I'm like not happy without understanding something, so I've like been fairly reflective on that sort of thing, I think, in general. Not like, you know, the highest efficiency I could have been, but that's been somewhat consistent at least.
Okay, so you want to look at these replies you wrote?
Yep. While you're just skimming that, I might grab a drink back in a tick.
So do you want to think about how to continue the main conversation and
Yeah.
start to write a reply?
One thing, I will do that now. One thing I was thinking about it generally though, I was thinking about like not like I didn't really have any desire to reply throughout the week. I think it's probably that I'm not particularly invested in the outcome of this. I don't know if that's a problem, but I thought I'd mention it. Yeah.
It's good to do some things you're not very invested in so that it's easier to have a more objective perspective and to get some more experience with that and compare and see what changes, if anything.
Yeah.
And also it's important to be not too reliant on like emotions or like having a sort of feeling of fun or interest or that kind of thing. Because sometimes you have a rational reason to do something, but you don't 100% understand it, and so some of your intuitions don't align with that. But it's still a good idea, and it's not actually negative. You know, it's not like you feel bad about it or have some problem that actually has to be urgently addressed. It's just not going completely smoothly. So being able to still do it anyways is part of like robustness and resilience instead of being kind of bossed around by how you feel about everything.
That so it feels like most people, their way of dealing with that is like willpower, quote unquote.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think willpower is good either.
when what's the difference between like the willpower idea, like because there are things that I like that fit in this category of stuff that I think is rational to do, but that I don't want to, or like don't prioritize, don't end up doing. Whether that's that I, prioritize something else that I want to do more, that's not necessarily more urgent, um, or like urgency is a good way that or sorry, not a good way, but a reliable way that I do that stuff. Um,
Okay,
oh,
so a couple
oh,
things.
sorry, someone's at the door, probably Mal. I'll be back in a tick. Okay. Yes, I think the last question was the difference between the willpower aspect and the like being able to do it like without. Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah, I wrote a few things about it.
Yeah. Okay. I if um wonder if maybe the like a negative thing about it, like or a negative reaction to it, sort of thing, is like simply not doing something else that I perceive to have like some quality, or like that the activity doesn't have some quality, um, which is like not quite sure, or I'm having trouble putting it into words, but it feels like a bad idea to me in the sense that that like it's a thing that it's a reason not to do things by default, which I don't think there necessarily should be something like that. Um, yeah, because it means that like everything is something you don't want to do to start with. Well, so maybe I like this idea of doing things like in a calm or detached way. Um, I feel like I've got very little practice at that, um, which maybe is part of it. But yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, um, I'll keep thinking about this. It's not something I think I'm going to solve immediately.
What about this idea? Is this easier or make sense?
Um, yeah, I do try and remind myself of the benefits and like think about the bigger picture stuff. I guess I'm not too convinced by it, or sort of. It's not that I'm not convinced by it. Like I, acknowledge the benefits. Um, it's not enough to like overcome the hurdle sort of thing. Um, maybe part of the reason is that some of this stuff I only ever really do or consider doing like at night or stuff like that when I'm already like tired or have run out of various types of energy or stuff like that. Because there's a
Yeah,
difference between like there's times where like I know that there's something good I should do that would like help flux, but I'm I all I want to do is like sit on the couch and relax a bit. Um, the and just knowing that there's a good benefit from it isn't enough to get me to do it at that moment. Um, and it sort of makes sense that that isn't able to override the sort of impetus to like take a break, um, or have downtime. But because I never try these things at other times, like first thing in the morning, um, that might be part of the problem.
Emphasizing some of the big goals and why they're important and why they matter can help. Like, you can connect things potentially to anti-aging stuff and talk about the difference between life and death. And it's possible to misuse this kind of thing and like pressure yourself a lot. And the way I think about it myself is roughly does this make sense?
Yeah. Um, I presume in the fourth paragraph there, when you say try not to waste time on the bottleneck, um, later you say not wasting bottleneck time. I presume those are the same things. Just the first reference was maybe a bit like I read it as don't spend time on the bottleneck uh, sort of thing, which I didn't understand till the second reference.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Right, it's waste and then the group time on the bottleneck.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a clearer label. And that makes a lot of sense. Is and I mean you can end up in that situation in lots of ways. Like overexerting yourself is a way to waste like future time on the bottleneck. Um, yeah, that does make sense. Um, I do think like my big goals connect to a lot of this stuff as well. Um, like maybe I'm wrong about the impact of flux, but if I'm right about it, then it'll make or reduce friction with like anti-aging research and stuff like that, which I think is important. And I don't think that we're in a situation now where governments are really interested in reducing that friction, particularly. So there's some bad side effects from some other legislation. Like stem cell research is one of those things that doesn't make life easier for anyone in that research area.
Yeah, so like wasting bottleneck time is like a sort of permanently lost opportunity. This applies well with mental energy in particular because you got sort of a daily budget. If you waste a day, you never get it back. You can't just do double work the next day because then you'll just be pushing towards burnout. And so if you throw away those resources, they're just sort of gone.
Yeah. Makes sense then that uh there's like a daily breakpoint for minimum progress. Not necessarily to the extent that you should never have days off, but I mean I take your point generally. Uh like you should prioritize bottleneck stuff for a minimum amount of time to ensure that's not wasted. You might be able to contribute a bit later on with less energy, but all the other stuff you can do is definitely stuff that you can, do with less energy. Um,
Yeah, and you can try to figure out what's sustainable, but for a lot of people, around 2 or 3 hours earlier in the day, and then go through more normal stuff with more of a whatever attitude
mm,
is reasonably sustainable and reasonably efficient and not wasting a lot.
yeah,
Concepts like doing 8 hours of hard focus work every day is uh, generally unrealistic.
yeah. All right. Should we go back to the genes and thoughts conversation?
Yeah. Yeah, my first thought about this is it's problematic to think someone's implying something via a chain of reasoning with like 10 steps.
I was trying to be particularly explicit with the chain of reasoning, um, but it's definitely still a pretty involved chain.
Yeah, that kind of thing is high risk. It's hard to predict someone's thoughts that much without them just saying it. There's also, so like I said, one part of, or is part of, right? And then you said
Mm,
are core to, and that's a substantial change. There's nothing in my quote right here that says core. There's nothing that corresponds to core.
yeah.
So I think that was a significant part of the problem. And it's not just
So,
core, you then say only way. And I don't
um,
think I said anything that corresponds to only way.
yeah, yep, I agree with that.
Okay, so that was this post, and one more. This makes sense. Common idea, yes. This example is controversial. Like, some people believe it, but other people think it's offensive and unreasonable.
I think people might think it's offensive to like mention, but I'm not
I
sure the
think
idea itself is controversial.
I think a fair amount of people think it's false. And that a lot of stuff is blamed on periods that is not actually related to periods or PMS or whatever.
Oh, I mean, yeah, no, that idea, I mean, um, I think there's like significant um doubt of the effect is so I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's particularly controversial for people to think that it's uh I don't know. I guess what am I drawing a distinction between? Um, I agree that some people will say like will be happy to agree with like some women blame things on PMS that they shouldn't, and that they don't like have a reasonable reason to. Um,
What I had in mind more was other people blame stuff on PMS, and then the woman denies it.
oh yeah, like you're just saying that because you're on your period.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
a problem. But yes, people can also use their period as an excuse. So I think the effects are a bit overstated and overrated because both sides of the aisle sometimes are biased in favor of claiming there's an effect.
yeah. There is one thing I've heard a bunch is that um, it's like different for every woman type thing. Uh, that the effect there's large variance in the effect. If that's the case though,
Right.
then that really doesn't support the idea that there's like a really solid effect that we can identify if it's just not existent in some people.
Yeah, and if there's large variance, then it can be a bit unfair to assume, oh, you seem irritable, you're probably on your period. Well, no, there's a lot of variance among women, so
Well,
it could
pa-
easily be something else.
pain is one of the things that I've heard brought up a lot. Like some people have particularly uh, painful periods, um, whereas others don't. Uh, that seems like a reasonable sort of thing. I mean, like there's lots of variance in people for effects generally for that sort of stuff. Um, or it feels like there is. But I'm not really sure. I haven't done any research on it.
I think the answer to the question, do you think you made an error, is yes, but I don't see a direct answer.
Oh, in terms of the like, yes, I made an error. I didn't include that there because I think I mentioned it earlier on. Um, like,
Oh,
uh,
oh, here.
yeah,
I see. Yeah, probably worth repeating. The post stands on its own a bit better.
uh, yeah. Oh, yeah. As in, like, you mean that you don't, like, I didn't point out what the mistake actually was. That
I
sort of
just
thing.
mean the yes answer is not present in this comment. This comment
Oh, yeah,
looks
yep.
sort of like it's meant to stand alone and be a substantial thing. So when I was reading, I didn't realize it was meant to connect to this text up here in a different comment that's not quoted.
Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, even just quoting that would have been a significant improvement.
Yeah, it's not a huge deal, but I mentioned it because I think giving direct answers to questions is pretty important in communication, and it's underdone.
Yeah,
People
so
often don't do it when they should.
I agree. Or they'll try and avoid directly saying yes, with whatever, techniques. But I guess it's more meant to be a direct follow on for like how did that happen, and then the caveat of we'll do a postmortem in a different post. Um,
Yeah, I
so it's
see.
meant to this is meant to be or I while I didn't have that in mind while writing it, I would expect it to be a direct response to how did that happen. be back in a tick.
Okay, replied.
Yep. So I think I've got a decent explanation now for uh why we should so I think there's two sort of things here, two positions as such. One of them is I shouldn't believe X because I don't have a good reason for it. And the stronger position is I shouldn't believe X because I have a good reason for it being false. Um, and so I think, like with that post, I think I've moved between the two of those. Like it wasn't particularly solid for me before about uh, why I should believe it false necessarily. Um, like I was thinking about abstraction layers and stuff, but I think I've got that stronger one now. Um, which is that the only like stable thing that we should expect to become emergent from our genes is essentially the regulation of the components that of the components that have something to do with our thinking processes. The only stable thing over time that we should see is uh, like the regulation to that gives us a good abstraction layer without anything else. Like any attempt to say that there were some genes that had that controlled ideas. If they were added, then it only takes like one uh, event sort of thing in the evolutionary chain to have strong selection pressure to turn those off. And there's no reason like turning them on again is a lot harder. Uh, yeah. So okay, actually, here's I think I might have like a counterexample type thing. Um, should I write it out?
Sure.
Um, so I generally agree about like the abstraction layer stuff. Things like so particularly, selection pressures are going to be the dominant thing. Like even if you could give ideas to dogs, like with your nanobots, why would they stay there? Even if they could arise, what would be the thing? But oh, I've misread this as well. You said I don't think the initial ideas in the brain matter a lot, not initial conditions. Um,
Yeah, initial conditions were the starting point of the dogs I mean, you could call it initial conditions for a brain. Like it's created by the genes during the creating a child process, and then at some point, like you're born and you're a person, and somewhere around there, you can call it the initial conditions
Yeah.
of the life.
So I guess I'm not clear on something there as well. Let me just note the things that I want to bring up. All right, the first one there might be quicker to write about. Um,
I wrote some more stuff about the genetic control.
Oh, cool. So just thinking about posting this, I am not exactly sure what I'm replying to. It's probably oh, speaking of which, I've just remembered I might uh bring up um the idea tree I had last time and keep building on that.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Because I think I'm replying pretty far back in the scheme of things. Oh, one good reason to link the replies, regardless of, like, for example, well, I mean, when they're right above, it doesn't matter that much. But in general too, is that like um it means it's really easy to click back through them to like find the previous
Yeah,
reply.
I know with quotes I often just
Control F.
search, text search
Yeah.
it.
Actually, I should check my tree. That'll be a probably a better way of figuring out where to reply to, because I don't have to consider branches as much. Yeah, so it was like basically immediately as soon as I came up with the tree, it was super quick to find.
BRB.
No worries.
Do you want me to watch the video, or was that explanation meant to stand on its own?
It's meant to be enough so that if you've like what I imagine is that if you've got like if you have a criticism of it, I don't think it's necessary, like it's not necessary that every criticism would require watching the video. Um, in terms of the details of the thing, then you probably need to watch the video,
Yeah. Like, it
but yeah.
doesn't say what flipping actually is or what caused it. So,
Yeah, no, I didn't I wanted to sort of um yeah. Um
Why do women have
let
breasts?
me explain that. That's a
Why
good
do women have
thing I
breasts?
should have
Why do
included.
Why do we have breasts is just so weird. It demands an explanation. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. Yes, talking about. See, this image designed for thumbnail and deliberately humorous is the most graphic depiction in this video of a pair of naked breasts. So if you've decided to watch this video in the hope of seeing lots of breasts, then I'm afraid you're going to have to brace yourself for disappointment. It's just a bloke talking about them. Oh, now I know some of you are thinking, wait a minute, I think I know why women have breasts, and it's quite obvious. And there are two ignorant, uninformed, layman's explanations for why women have breasts. The first of these goes something like, they're for feeding babies, you idiot. And the second one is, because they're sexy, you idiot. But in this video, I'm going to suggest that neither of these things actually satisfactorily explains why women have breasts. Now, I'm talking here about most breasts. You see, most breasts at the moment, I'm speaking to you now, are not lactating. If they're not lactating, they can't be used for feeding a baby. If I'm in a shopping centre somewhere with a baby and I realise, oh, it's very hungry, and I see a woman with breasts, I go, I'm sorry, I see her breasts, so use to feed my baby because I'm afraid my lady friend was wandered off. She's likely to look at me as I'm completely mad. There's several reasons, but one will be that her breasts don't work. Yeah, she's got breasts, but they're purely decorative. They don't actually function. They don't lactate. And this is unique. In the animal kingdom, only humans are like that. If you're on a dairy farm and you see some bovine creature with teats but no udder, that'll be a heifer. It hasn't given birth yet. Only when the heifer gives birth to a calf does it go to all the trouble and expense of growing an udder so it can feed that calf. And after it's fed the calf, if it's not a dairy farm and they take the calf away and they're not going to milk the cow for its milk, it dries up and the udder disappears again. Humans are not like this. Humans uniquely have permanent breasts, and that requires an explanation. So why do we have breasts? Oh, they're feeding babies. That doesn't work as an explanation. Why do we have permanent breasts? Now, there's something called Fisherian runaway selection, and in this, it's a mechanism which is used to describe the evolution of sexual traits. The classic example is the peacock's tail. A peacock has a huge, shimmering, iridescent green tail, which is a major burden. But how did it evolve? This next Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin said, well, I've got this theory of evolution, which seems to explain most biology. I can't explain the peacock's tail. I wish I could. And the people since his time have come up with satisfactory explanations for the peacock's tail. Quick summary: it's a handicap and it's an honest indicator. So it's a handicap in that it's a great big thing which makes extremely difficult to hide or run away from predators. So if you can survive with that handicap, then wow, you must be a really great peacock. And in the wild, that makes it an honest indicator. Wow, you must be. It's actually proof that you're a good peacock because you have survived. Look, there you are alive with that amazing tail. It's huge, it's a great burden, and it really makes it impossible for you to hide. And it shows that you've got a good immune system and you're well fed. So you're a great peacock. You have to be well fed to get all the nutrients necessary for the amazing colours. And I've seen peacocks who are a bit ill and they've got a heavy parasite burden because their immune system is not that good. And their tails are sort of brown and rather unimpressive. So if you see the wow tail, that means that's a really good peacock. So that means that so how do they evolve? Well, fishery selection is a sort of self-reinforcing circle. The peahens, the females who are sensible and modeled and camouflaged, they look at the various peacocks that they could make with and think, oh wow, he's really sexy, that one. And if I therefore think he's really sexy, then the others probably really sexy. Oh, actually, look, I've just seen three all mate with him. Okay, fair enough, he's sexy, he's the one I want. So they make with the sexiest, and then they'll have his sons. So their sons will be sexy and will pass on more of their genes. So he's definitely the one to mate with. And so it's a self-reinforcing cycle. So you get runaway fishery selection sometimes with sexual traits like peacock's tails. So possibly this at some point in the past took place with humans, and we end up with the modern situation, which is women with permanent breasts and decorative breasts. But that's still not enough of an explanation on yet. How did we get there? Now, I would say that humans are unique in that they have permanent breasts, and therefore the explanation of why they have permanent breasts probably also involves their uniqueness. So what else is unique about humans? Well, how do they escape predation? You see, or how do they predate? If you are a tigress, you have to hunt in order to feed yourself and your cubs. And even if you've just given birth and there are cubs, you still have to hunt. And an udder swinging between your back legs is incumbent. It gets in the way, but you've got to hunt anyway. Because you don't have a tiger, you're a solitary creature. You don't have a tiger supporting your kids, so you need to get on with it. So tigers can't afford to grow a big swinging, encumbering udder. So they don't. They get away with just the minimum necessary to feed the cubs. And if you are a prey species, if you're a sheep or an antelope or a wildebeest or something, then again, you want to be able to run as fast as possible. And how do you escape from a predator? By running. So predators need to be able to run, and prey need to be able to run. It's all about running. And encumbrance is only going to be a disadvantage. So if you're in a herd, you need to run faster than the rest of the herd. The other's not going to help. So that means that humans are different because humans don't run away. You see, any creature big enough to bring down a full-grown adult female can easily outrun her. If she tries to escape from the wolves by running away, she's dead. So how do women escape predation? Well, they're group animals, they go around in large groups, and humans are pretty dangerous, and very, very few wild animals will take on a band of humans because they're so dangerous. And they're very often guarded by, in the wild, only hunter-gatherers have been very, very studied, the hands and people like that. Very often a group of women that's gone out to gather berries and nuts and things will be guarded by a few teenage boys with spears and perhaps occasional older man. So they're guarded, and they're in groups, and they have things like spears, and they can throw things, and they've got fire, they have other methods, things other than running, which means that, in fact, human women don't need to be able to run fast in order to survive predation. The number of women in the EEA, the environment of evolutionary adaptation, the Pleistocene, when humans were evolving, the number of women who died because they were eaten by wolves is probably pretty small. They died of other stuff. So that meant that they were free to evolve breasts. Oh, so there you go. There you go. I've used unique to humans to explain why women have breasts. Great. Oh, wait, no, except I haven't. What I've just done is I've shown how it was possible for women to evolve breasts because of something that was unique about humans. They need to be able to run fast to stay alive. But it doesn't mean that they would evolve breasts. I mean, they could evolve all sorts of things. They could evolve like something like the snood on a turkey, you know, a big sort of floppy bit of flesh that hangs off the head of the male turkey, or perhaps women would evolve one of those, or perhaps a tail like a peacock. They could evolve all sorts of things.
I'm just going to try playing a video. Let me know if you hear the sound. Did that come through?
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I responded to some stuff. A general impression with this is he even says it's an unknown, and even when they think they know, they often don't. This stuff is a bit complicated, and evolutionary psychology is broadly a bad field. It just gets a lot of things wrong by telling stories that sound nice but don't have to be true.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to use it as a counterexample because it could just be wrong.
So he mentions the Pleistocene. Wow, okay, great. Somewhere between 2.6 and 12,000 years ago. 2.6 million and 12,000 years ago.
Oh, I see. That's a large time span.
Yeah, so I did a bit of Googling, and then, so in terms of, like, I mean, I think Homo sapiens are the only, like, member of the Homo genus that's, that are still alive. So that's, like, a long time ago. I don't remember if he mentions anything about, um, uh, like, fossil records or other members of the genus. I had in my head for some reason, uh, like, and I think I was just conflating the idea that humans have been sort of like anatomically the same or like evolutionarily stable for like 200,000 odd years. Um, I think I'm conflating that with the idea of like the EEA and the Pleistocene and stuff like that. So it's unclear to me whether it's 2 million or 200,000 years ago or somewhere in between. Um, in terms of his theory. So it's not a but I agree that that if there's no or that if it's the before memes, which is, I mean, memes obviously there's no fossil record for memes, but I sort of work under the idea that they're 200,000 odd years old, maybe maybe a bit older, but like realistically, it's got to be around that time when uh like it would be possible that other members of the Homo genus had uh like the special thing about intelligence as well. It doesn't necessarily make sense for all, species with that configuration to survive if they're in those sort of environments. It does make sense for one, but I don't think I'm not sure if enough is known about that sort of thing. Um, it could also have happened later, so that like Neanderthals didn't have the configuration, but we did, whatever that was. In this was consider in enough. Is that a typo for consider it enough?
Yes. In
Yep,
should
cool.
be it.
I actually initially read that, and only when I read the quote did I, yeah, pick up.
So, we're low on time. What do you think of the discussion so far?
Um, so I think it's been good to continue a bit. For essentially for where was the oh I said something oh I didn't read some of didn't read this at least. Um,
I wrote several comments. I don't know if you read them all. There's a decent number you haven't responded to yet.
yeah, no, these I haven't read before. Um, yeah, so uh, I'm not sure. Like besides like practicing having a conversation, I'm not quite sure what the point of continuing it particularly would be. Um, I think it's been overall quite valuable though, and uh, I mean, and enjoyable even though I'm not particularly invested in it. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it'd be worth working on your tree more before next time uh to figure out the current state of the discussion and what the open points and questions are, and either respond to some stuff and continue, or write some sort of closing summary of the current situation and like how you're leaving it. Does that make sense?
yep. Um, so one thing I was just thinking of while you were saying that was uh, I mean, um, maybe calling a conversation done is a better way to describe it. Um,
Yeah, that's kind of goal based.
yeah. It's a thing that I haven't really thought much about, I guess. Um, that's obviously a bit relevant here. Yeah, okay. So those
Yeah, some of the
um
standard issues are whether your initial ideas got addressed, whether you have open questions, whether standard ideas that you're familiar with got addressed, like if someone brought them up to you, could you answer them?
yeah. Um yeah. Um yeah, I think working on the conversation tree, one thing I noticed, because I did more typing this time, I spent more time doing that. Um I didn't add to this at all after I brought it up. So it would be good to yeah, see where that is. I get one of the other things that just occurs to me is I don't really know how I so I've got like a general sort of feeling on the conversation, which is that I'm not sure what we'd really get out of it by continuing. But overall, I don't know any thoughts about specifics about like what chains of reasoning have like or what chains of conversation have gone on in there. What do I think about each one? Are there any unanswered questions that I think uh, or just any unanswered questions? There might be questions that aren't like answered in the tree, but that I've got answers to or know the answers to. That's sort of like a slightly different thing, um, but yeah, but I don't know. Like besides that, like general overall feeling, I don't know anything about the conversation, the current state of the conversation compared to last week. Or I did know a lot more last week. Um, anyway, yeah, I
Okay,
guess
yeah.
that's it.
So I
An
think
observation, but it's
reviewing
something to fix.
reviewing that would be good. And yeah, see what happened and get a better perspective on it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's a good thing to do. And then then I can decide whether I think there's still, well, I can actually just make a more informed decision about what value is where. Yeah, cool.
Briefly, you want to
Mhm.
answer this question a bit in voice?
Yeah, what did I think? Oh yeah, so the in terms of what I think you thought. So where did I yeah. So I knew you had some thoughts on like initial stuff. But I didn't know how like strongly you uh believed them as such. In that my impression is that stuff on the debate topics page, actually in some ways this doesn't make sense, but stuff on the debate topics page are stuff that you like have a stronger belief in, sort of thing. Um, but uh, that doesn't necessarily make sense in that, like, if I was like thought that, you know, chances are something was the case, but I wasn't sure, like that's also a good debate topic in the sense that if someone can bring that up to me and improve it, then that's like good. So I should like advertise that as opposed to hide those things away. So maybe that's part of the reason I had the wrong idea.
Okay,
Um,
but what you're saying there is some reasons that you would expect me to have a strong position, right? But then
yeah.
here you say that now you think I have a stronger position, so I'm not sure why you went to stronger.
Um, More particular is probably the synonym or the thing that I should have said. So I'm conscious of like arguments by strength issues with words like stronger. It's just the shorthand, I guess. But yeah, but the reason that I said I think your position is stronger now is uh yeah, in to do with the depth of precision, I guess, in terms of what you believe. Which is not necessarily what was on the debate topics page.
Oh,
Um,
okay, so not exactly stronger, but more like thorough and rigorous, maybe? Is
yeah,
kind of
that's
what
a
you mean?
better, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
that I
Detailed.
understand more. Yeah, detailed. Yeah, a lot of
Um,
my positions are like that. People sometimes don't seem to expect it or something. I don't know why.
so yeah, so stronger was the wrong word to use. I get the feeling that it is misused like that somewhat commonly in like universities and things. Um, as in strength of a position is not just it's not just an arguments of support thing. It's also a like
Yeah,
specificity.
sure,
Which is
sure.
stronger is not a good word to use for it, but yeah. Um, uh,
Okay, and then there's the second part. What's the difference? Like, you first you thought I thought X, and now you think I think Y. Is there something that like you changed or I changed about in your mind?
um, I'd sort of I hadn't really thought about it and the conflict with other things I know about what you think. Um, I sort of thought that the idea that genes don't have a significant, influence on our thoughts. Um, for whatever reason, I guess I thought that was sort of like a like excluded stuff. Like genes can give us like ideas. Genes can um uh like can set maybe quite complex like initial conditions for the brain um in terms of stuff that's in there. Uh, I guess in some ways that makes sense because there's like strong software components to whatever's going on with intelligence. Um, and it doesn't make sense that evolution has figured out like, a super like cut down efficient minimal version. Um, so in some ways it's sort of like actually here's an analogy. Um, uh, Windows comes with like particularly if you buy certain laptops, it comes with a lot of bloatware, but Windows itself doesn't have a significant impact on the type of like applications you run, putting aside like the difference between Mac applications and Windows type thing. But in terms of like otherwise, you can run whatever you want. It's not that you can, it's not directed towards word processing and not gaming or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
even if there
It's
is
very
bloatware,
generically powerful.
yeah,
It's
even
I don't know if I told you this example, but it's from David Deutsch. Um, it's a car that steers the turn to the right and go wherever you wanted.
yep. This is so I don't think I've read that, so I presume it's not in
Oh, it
BO1,
was
but it's a
from
good.
a private conversation.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I think that's sort of like so the reason that I'd said like your position is stronger as well in terms of more specific, is that it's like it's more opinionated, I guess is another way to put it, in that it's
Okay, yeah.
uh like more things are explicitly allowed and not allowed as opposed to like fuzziness or anything there. Um, because it sort of makes sense. It's like, we can have like a low level, influence in some sort of direction, but that doesn't mean like the car, but that doesn't mean that we actually have like a significant thing. Um, and or in some ways that's less specific, or specificity is a bad way to talk about it. The boundaries are
Yeah,
not
yeah.
where I thought they were, sort of thing. I thought you had a more like I thought the boundaries were a bit more restrictive on what was allowed, I guess. Um, allowed as in
Yeah.
like under your explanation, your idea.
Yeah, so then you can go through different types of ideas and be like, it doesn't make any sense for the genes to cause you to be a Democrat or
Mm,
to like dance or something. But you can try to make up like special case exceptions, like, in general, genes aren't controlling our ideas, but maybe they control a few specific ideas. And some of the candidates people might try are sexual attraction, eating behaviors, or emotions would be some of the common ones people might think, or maybe some like mental health stuff.
mm.
And you could be like, because people think that like there's genes that cause people to be more likely to get angry or something. Like I think that's a pretty common view.
Yeah,
And
actually, there's
people kind of
yep, sorry.
disconnect anger from high level ideas. Like they sort of think it's something different than an argument against induction, right? They put it in a pretty different category.
Yeah.
So
One
you
thing
can
that
go into extra detail on that kind of stuff and try to deal with that.
um I can't remember where I put it, but there's a draft type thing I started. Well, I made a what do you call it, a file for it. Um, maybe it's in here. Anyway, there's this idea, yeah, evolution selected for depression. This is actually something that's relevant that might conflict with maybe it doesn't conflict. Maybe it's in the like specific thing. Um, particularly part of that is like suicide as an outcome is like something I explicitly include. Anyway, we're past the hour though. Um, cool. I'll update the tree and stuff, and we can pick it up on Monday.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
Bye.
Sounds good. See you then.